Tens of thousands of Bolivians celebrate the election victory of the Hamas party in El Alto. Zambia celebrates its 56th independence anniversary. And Hamas rejects the normalization of ties between Israel and Sudan. Welcome to TeleSUR. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. In Bolivia, the Hamas party and its followers are celebrating the electoral win. On Saturday, citizens in El Alto took to the streets to celebrate the victory of Luis Arce as president-elect with cultural events. Other political parties and social movements also joined the celebration. Arce is expected to speak to his followers after 5 days of the electoral results. The Hamas party candidate is expected to take office on November 8th, following a year since the coup against President Evo Morales.
This is a celebration of democracy. It's a cultural manifestation of our people because we have recovered our democracy. We are happy. We see hope on people's faces. Our brothers and sisters share their happiness by dancing and showing our culture. The culture of brotherhood and joy. The people have recovered their spirit, their courage. We are confident that we will triumph and overcome any difficulties ahead.
Our correspondent Camila Escalante has more from Bolivia.
The fifth consecutive mass victory in 15 years and the restoration of democracy and return to constitutionality and legitimacy in Bolivia is being celebrated here today by tens of thousands on Avenida Cívica in El Alto. This follows the declaration by the electoral authority last night that Bolivians elected the movement towards socialism's candidate, Lucho y David, in a majority vote, giving this post-coup government a strong mandate. They'll be sworn in on November 8th. It's important to recall that the regime has spent 10 months since January persecuting and trying to jail leaders of the Hamas and ban them from standing in these elections. This 55% vote is the reason why a media terror campaign of hate and fear, where the majority of outlets are controlled by the wealthy elites, was fought and won by the organized working class, who refused to adopt the perverse views of the neoliberal U.S.-backed regime. Bolivia is an example for the rest of the continent and world of how to defeat imperialist attacks.
That was Camila Escalante from Bolivia. And Chileans are preparing for a historic day on October 25th, when the country will vote on a referendum on whether to change the dictatorship-era constitution. More than 14.8 million Chileans are eligible to vote on Sunday, and several polls show that at least 70% favor drafting a new constitution. If approved, it will take more than a year to finish writing the new text. This was one of the main demands of the nationwide protest movement, which began last October. The Peruvian Congress has decided to postpone an impeachment debate against President Martín Vizcarra until November. Lawmakers are set to debate on the motion in the next session of Parliament, which is scheduled for November 4th. The motion, signed by lawmakers from 4 parties, accuses the president of receiving bribes and lying repeatedly to the country about the allegations. It seeks his ouster on the grounds of permanent moral incapacity. The Congress rejected the first motion of vacancy presented against Vizcarra in September, which was motivated by the irregular hiring of an advisor to the Ministry of Culture. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro held a meeting with the top figures of the armed forces and denounced what he said were plans of destabilization by the Colombian government.
Hemos tenido una reunión de trabajo.
We have had a very productive, favorable, important working meeting to review all the plans, to review Plan number 76, the Republic Plan, all the plans for the development of the weapon systems, all the intelligence plans, counterintelligence and protection of the border with Colombia, in order to be aware of and prepared for the aggressions of Iván Duque, who from Colombia is preparing thousands of mercenaries to attack the military posts on the border, to attack our country. We must be prepared, ready and willing to reject any armed incursion, any aggression by the Colombian government of Iván Duque, the paramilitary, the mass murderer of Colombian people.
And now to Colombia. The Truth, Coexistence and Non-Repetition Commission held its 6th meeting regarding the truth of indigenous people living at risk of physical and cultural extermination. The meeting was aimed at exposing the social conditions in which Colombian indigenous communities are living after the signing of the 2016 peace accords. The Commission also denounced the assassination of at least 89 indigenous people during this year, as well as the forced internal displacements. They also called on the Colombian government to put an end to the increasing violence that threatens at least 115 indigenous communities. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Welcome back. Let's continue with news. Zambia has celebrated its 56th independence anniversary. Zambia gained independence from British colonial rule on October 24, 1964, but celebrations are overshadowed by growing domestic and external debt. Copper-rich Zambia has seen its external debt surge to nearly $12 billion this year, around 80% of its GDP. And the country's currency has fallen around 30% against the dollar since the start of the year. Low demand for copper has pressured global prices, with knock-on effects for Zambia's mining industry.
We need to be hardworking as a people, because all the nations that have made it, it's not the outsiders that have made it work. It's always the indigenous people that have made it work. And hence our cry to the government is always that they identify themselves more with the indigenous entrepreneurs other than the outside entrepreneurs.
Well, at the moment, I think we're in trouble. You know, we're a country that's a good 55, 56 years after independence, and yet we find that at the present moment we have the highest foreign debt and domestic debt in the history of our nation. We have a foreign debt, government foreign debt of about $13 billion if you include government guarantees, and a total debt as a nation to the outside world to the tune of about $27 billion.
Peace has started to return to Nigeria's main commercial city, Lagos, after days of violent protests. Businesses in Lagos reopened on Saturday, and volunteers took to the streets to clean up after a statewide curfew was relaxed in the aftermath of protests over police violence. At least 51 civilians and 18 security personnel were killed in the unrest. The protests saw the destruction of businesses and vehicles across Lagos, with demonstrators calling for the disbanding of Nigeria's special police force called SARS, which has been accused of human rights abuses.
That was a massacre, genocide. He didn't say anything about it. He can't tell me he didn't know anything about it, and he kept quiet about it. People died, people lost their loved ones, and he didn't mention anything about it. Our president is incompetent, and I think he should resign.
Several protests in solidarity with Nigerian protesters have been held in different cities across the world. In the United Kingdom, Nigerians living in London rallied against the current situation in their home country. Similar protests took place in Russia, Belgium, and Germany. Protests against Nigeria's SARS unit and police abuse in general erupted on October 8th after a video of an officer allegedly killing a civilian went viral on social media. Authorities in Cameroon have arrested 4 Ivory smugglers attempting to transport nearly 120 elephant tusks through the country's southern border. The group had trafficked nearly 675 kilograms of the illicit cargo from neighboring Gabon, which is home to more than half of Africa's remaining forest elephants. It was the biggest ivory seizure in the West African nation in 5 years. The global trade in elephant ivory has been outlawed since 1989 after the animal population dropped from millions in the mid-20th century to about 600,000 by the end of that decade.
As you know, we are in a border region and cross-border criminality is very high generally in this zone. So with the relevant officials, we have carried out this special mission to search and track contraband wherever it occurs. And this is the result, as you can see with this Ivory task.
Guinea's President Alpha Conde has been re-elected for a third term. The country's Independent Electoral Commission has released preliminary results indicating a 59.49% win for Conde. Opposition leader Celo Dalein Diallo, who was Conde's main rival, received 33.5% of the vote. However, opposition supporters have complained about irregularities and vowed to challenge the results in court. But the government insists that the electoral process was fair.
Accordance with Article 41, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, which stipulates the election of the President of the Republic is achieved through an absolute majority from the votes cast. The candidate having received the highest number of votes is declared the winner. Consequently, the candidate, Professor Alpha Conde of the Rally of the Guinean Peoples, is declared elected in the first round of the presidential election with 59.49%.
Egyptians have voted in the first stage of the country's parliamentary elections. About 63 million voters are expected to cast their ballots for the election of 568 lawmakers in the lower house. Egypt's parliamentary elections will be held in two phases, the first covering 14 provinces on Saturday and Sunday, while the second will take place on November 7th and 8th and will cover 13 provinces, including the capital, Cairo. The new parliament is the second to convene under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who came into power in 2014 after the ousting of former leader Mohamed Morsi.
The message I want to deliver through my participation is that I want to see something new happening. During the last period, there were no services, so hopefully this might change for the better.
More stories coming up. Don't go away. Thank you for joining us again. The Palestinian organization Hamas has condemned the normalization of ties between Israel and Sudan. Hamas spokesman Hassem Qassem described the deal announced by U.S. President Donald Trump as a political sin. The president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, based on the Israeli-occupied West Bank, joined the condemnation. Sudan is the third Arab country since August to announce normalization of its relations with Israel, after the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain.
Announcing the normalization of relations between the Sudan and the occupying state is a major political sin, and it is condemned, as it harms the Palestinian cause and the interests of the Palestinian people, and encourages the occupation to commit more crimes.
And the news about the normalization of relations between Sudan and Israel has been met with mixed reactions in Sudan. In the Sudanese capital, Khartoum, some expressed concern that the deal does not serve the interests of Sudanese people, while government officials see it as an opportunity to build trade agreements, salvaging the country's conflict-ridden economy. In a statement, Sudan and Israel said delegations would meet in the coming weeks to negotiate agreements of cooperation, including on agriculture, aviation, and migration.
We are against normalization because normalization does not save the interests of Sudan, neither now nor tomorrow. Our country is considered the food basket of the world. We do not need normalization to improve our situation, make projects and investments, and raise the level of income. Our country, with its people, can become better than America, Israel, and all countries if we come together and put our hands together.
The Seychelles Islands has also gone to the polls for presidential and parliamentary elections. The country's incumbent president, Danny Faure, has expressed confidence of being re-elected. He faces two rivals, with the main one being the Anglican priest Wabel Ramkalawan, who is taking his sixth shot at the presidency. The other is Alain Saint-Ange, who was in the opposition before joining the government as tourism minister, but is now running under the flag of a new party, One Seychelles. As the nation is made up of various islands, the elections will take 3 days to complete.
So far, things have been going on very smoothly. I see people are able to express their vote. And so all in all, the electoral process itself is going smoothly. And I commend the Electoral Commission for the work being done so far. I see the devotion of all the electoral officers and furthermore the commitment of all political parties.
Thousands have protested across Poland for the third consecutive day against a near-total ban on abortion. The protesters were reacting to Thursday's ruling by Poland's Constitutional Court that an existing law allowing the abortion of malformed fetuses was incompatible with the Constitution. The ruling has provoked an outcry from rights groups in and outside the strongly Catholic country of 38 million people. The ruling means that from now on, abortions will only be allowed in instances of rape, incest, or if there is a threat to the woman's life.
This near total ban on abortion obviously impacts the poorest woman, which is why we must show solidarity. But above all, we must change Poland. There is no agreement that poor women should be punished by an oppressive state and religious fanatics.
Large demonstrations erupted in Hungary's capital, Budapest, on Friday to protest the government's decision, which they claim undermines academic freedom. Demonstrators held up torches and banners reading "Free Country, Free University" and "Art is Free." They rejected the government's decision to transfer the control of Hungary's University of Theatre and Film Arts to a private foundation, including the appointment of a new board. A group of students has been barricaded inside the university since September 1st, claiming that a government-appointed board will deprive the school of its autonomy. And a number of top professors have resigned in protest of the government's move.
It's very cruel how they treat this university, and I have never seen anything like this happening in Central Europe, and it is disturbing, to be honest. So that's why I'm here, because I find this disturbing. I can't find any other words for it.
We want quality education. However, this is only possible in autonomous institutions. It is not guaranteed by the ruling power. There is a common set of rules concerning universities in Europe, which has developed over the centuries, and the cornerstone of these rules is institutional autonomy. This is exactly what the government is trying to take away.
With that, we end this news brief. But of course, you can find all of our stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media. For TeleSUR English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.